This is Tim.
This is Ryan.
And this is Critiquing Comics. Welcome to Critiquing Comics. This is Tim in Tokyo with Ryan Cecil Smith in California somewhere. I always forget. Los Angeles area?
North Hollywood, Los Angeles.
North Hollywood, okay. So that must mean that you're a movie star, right?
No, you know what? You know, it's not like that at all. Just a regular guy.
Yeah, well, I've heard most of Hollywood is not the glamorous place that people picture, but...
Well, I live in North Hollywood, Tim. So
right.
for all the Angelinos out there, they're rolling their eyes, Tim, at what you're saying.
So
North Hollywood is on the other side of the mountain. See, so it's not like the glamorous zone. I heard it had a bad reputation once, but it's pretty nice now. I like, but it's not full on Hollywood, but it's in the name. It's kind of neat.
Brad Pitt doesn't live there.
I mean, not that I'm aware of. I think I heard a lot of celebs live in Sherman Oaks, which is a nearby valley town, which means nothing to you, Tim. So
okay, well, I've heard of Sherman Oaks. Yeah, yeah, I don't picture anything when I hear the name, but
maybe Encino, home of the Neanderthal. Anyway.
When you say Encino, I think of Valley Girl. It's mentioned in that song.
I don't know anything, but yeah. There's a whole valley full of people in Los Angeles. Of all sorts.
Okay, so we do have a comic to talk about.
Yep.
So this is called Epic Tavern's Tales from the Fantastical Crimes Unit. Kind of a long title.
I just call it Fantastical Crimes. Fantastic Crimes Unit in my head. The FCU.
Okay. The FCU, yeah. The FCU movies, no. So... This comic, I thought it was competently drawn by Steve Mardo. I should mention colors by Steve Lavigne, letters by Rob Jones. Not quite Marvel or DC level art, but I thought it was pretty good indie comics art.
Yeah.
I had an issue with the writing by Shawn French.
Okay.
And I think it's significant that he's also listed as the editor, because I think if the editor had been a different person, he or she would have said some of the same things I'm going to say.
Wait, can I just say before you go, I want to hear what you have to say, but honestly, I came in opposite. I was like kind of more into the writing and less into the art. So what does that mean? But so you go ahead and we'll get into that. I agree, as you said. It's something. It's well. So what did you think of the writing?
I started reading this, and immediately I felt lost because the world is not very well explained. So we've got this film noir type detective called Victor Marshall, and he's in some kind of fantastical world. There are a lot of magical type characters. And he works at the Fantastical Crimes Unit. But what is that? Is that the police? I didn't see any uniformed officers. He walks into the FCU and it's this big hall full of crazy fantasy creatures. And there was no explanation of what those creatures were doing there. They're just there.
It was a little like Men in Black. Like in that scene when they get down there. But in Men in Black, you've had a lot of context and setup, and a bunch of the people are in black, so you kind of know what's going on. But in this one, you're right. It does just kind of open up in this huge party scene. It could be a party scene if I wasn't reading it. No idea, no idea who or what's what. That's true. That's true.
So then finally, I noticed on the credits page it says adapted from the video game Epic Tavern. And that makes me think that the writer has fallen into the trap of knowing the world really well and forgetting that the reader might not. If we don't play the video game, this is completely unfamiliar, and he hasn't really given us the guidance that we need to understand what this world is and what's going on without being into the video game.
Yes, that I agree. My number one complaint that I wrote down before we talked is this. I said, this feels like it wants to be something else,
Mm.
like a movie or a video game. And
Mm-hmm.
hearing you say that, I'm like, yeah, this is like it's a support beam, or it's something built on top of something else that's the
Mm-hmm.
main. But it doesn't feel like it thinks of itself as being able to be judged on its own merits.
Right.
Yeah. It's so it's from a video game. Okay, well
Mm-hmm.
that would explain something.
Yeah. So I didn't notice that when I was trying to read it last night, and admittedly, I had some other distractions last night, but I found reading this comic just an irritating experience, mainly because of that, I think. Because from page one, I was like, what is going on? Where are we? Who are these people? And it didn't really give me
Yes.
much help.
I totally agree. I know what you mean. Yeah. Yeah.
And so it was kind of hard for me to even absorb the rest of the comic. But I mean, there's this woman named Amelia Mortals who talks a lot and is seeing herself as a member of the FCU and helping Victor somehow.
She's like the Agent J to the other guy's Agent K, the Will Smith to the Tommy Lee Jones in Men
Mm,
in Black.
hmm
She's like the new, and you know, I noticed I also I didn't really think the characterization, especially of this character, the main two characters was very kind of weak, to be
hmm
honest. You know, because they kind of just rest. The main character, I never caught his name,
Oh,
to be honest.
Victor Marshall, the detective.
Oh, it's on the front page, but it just breezes by, and that's kind of my point. Is that you don't really know anything about the main character at all. Actually, he just kind of rests on the kind of cliche of
Hmm
like older, kind of cranky detective. That's all you know about him. You don't know he's kind of level-headed. He's kind of smart. He's kind of annoyed at the young person, but you don't know if he, you know, does he like Mexican food? You don't know anything about his personality, his, you
Right.
know, nothing about his taste. So they don't get into him at all. And with the girl too, it's just kind of like this noisy girl
Yeah,
who
and there's so many word balloons that don't mean anything that I just kind of stopped reading what her dialogue
that's
after a while.
that's where I kind of felt like this wants to be a movie or a video game or something,
Hmm
where this would be the chatter that you write in, especially a video game, like the character kind of chatting as you move around the world as like kind
hmm
of backdrop sound. But in a comic, as you're reading this thing, it's like this. They give this huge balloon, and you're supposed to just kind of be like, okay, so this she's. I mean, does anyone make it through the whole four word balloons of her? Just you get it. You're like, okay, this is she's
hmm
chat. It's
Yeah,
kind of
as the lettering gets smaller and smaller while she's talking,
yes,
like that
yes, yeah.
means it's irrelevant, so I'm not going to read it.
But there seems like there could be a better way. You know, as you, in a video game, you can have some with the sound on while you're doing something else. But in
Hmm
this form, it's kind of weird to write all that text and like the purpose of it is to be ignored. You know, it seems like there could be a better way to explain that or something.
hmm Yeah, I didn't understand the significance of anybody, and we've got this woman who looks like Carmen San Diego, except she's got four hooves.
She's a centaur,
Centaur. Yeah, I keep
Carmen.
wanting to say Minotaur, but I think that's only
No, no,
two
she's a
legs.
centaur. Carmen
Centaur.
San Diego centaur. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't even remember who she was either.
I think she was the person who like gave them their mission, which is to find a girl.
Queen of the Centaurs and Mistress of the Endless Wood. Yeah. So Angel is missing, and Angel is another centaur woman, younger looks like, and she's been kidnapped, I guess. And so yeah, they're out to try to rescue her.
I would point out, Tim, can I point out in the panel where we are introduced to Angel, you just said she's a centaur. There's a text balloon in the middle of her body.
Yeah, I didn't notice it until just now as I was saying
So
that.
I
Because the
didn't, you know, this is a thing. This is a thing where, you know, this is not like comics form good.
Yeah, that's the only worst place you could have put that word balloon is over her face.
Right, but yeah, yeah, by a narrow margin because
Yeah.
it obscures the like main character trait that apparently she's a centaur. I had no idea till just now. That yeah, word balloon
Yeah,
placement
covers up most of her centaur body. So,
has to be considered when you make a comic, and it's
hmm
annoying sometimes. It's a beginner's mistake that we all. By the way, I don't know if this guy's a beginner, but it can happen to anyone. But you got to keep it in mind. You can't just place a word balloon. Well, it'd be the letterer, and I don't know who the letterer is. We didn't mention the letterers.
yeah, that was Rob Jones, who's in the
Rob
credits.
Jones. So Rob Jones, this is something you cannot do again. Place a word balloon on top of the character you're introducing. Like it's like kind of a main character, kind of.
Certainly the main character in that panel.
Yes.
She's the one who's kidnapped. She's the one who's talking. So
Yes.
put that word balloon over the bricks in the floor or something.
Something. Yeah. Yep.
So you were saying that you were not so into the art. Now, I mean, I would agree that it's not really, I don't know, it's not quite to my taste in terms of the style, but I mean, I was kind of impressed by that 2-pager at the beginning of the hall with all the crazy creatures. I mean, as little as I understood what was going on there, I did think that it was well done.
Well, I did not think that it was well done.
Okay.
But I understand kind of what you're saying, but I guess I'm saying like, that doesn't do anything, So you drew a lot of characters on the page, and there's different types, but
Well,
hey, can I ask Tim, by the way, we didn't get into this in the beginning, but as I'm new to doing this podcast with you and you're doing all the hard work, can I ask you,
go ahead.
who sent this in? And, I have a hard time giving like feedback to someone, I hope I'm not just out here like squawking into the microphone and these guys are like, how did he get a hold of this? Why are you talking about it if you hate it, kind of thing.
I don't know. I mean, I'm assuming that it was one of the creators, but I can't locate the information right now.
Okay. Well, all right. I just wanted to say, that I kind of felt that there were a lot of things that I didn't like about the art, and I feel it's kind of hard to put it into words. So I'm going to try my best. But so I just want to say, I think the last time I was on here, I wanted to say to the artists, like, I want to recognize all your hard work and accomplishments, but now I want to say a bunch of things which maybe are kind of subjective, but I feel kind of strong about, and I hope it isn't nonsensical. So,
hang on a second. I found it was the artist Steve Mardo who sent this to us.
Steve Mardo. Okay,
Yeah.
so Steve Mardo is a listener. So I want to say, Steve Mardo, your work is cool. You did a lot, but I just feel strongly about how this should be. So I'm gonna be a critique voice or like that. So I thought that to take that example of that giant panel, I mean, some of the things I'll tell you that I really didn't. I just don't see how this is a good drawing. It seems like there is as much detail, like the bricks have more. The bricks on the floor have more visual weight than many of the characters because they are bigger than the characters and they are more clear and graphic. And a lot of the characters seem to have been drawn with a smaller pen that is hard to see from far away.
Yeah, I see your point. You can't really make out faces in a lot of cases. They're kind of too far away from you.
So this doesn't feel like a drawing to me. It feels like a collage of different drawings, and I just don't feel that it's creating a scene. I don't feel like it's a moment in time. All I can see is like the hard work of putting this thing all together, but it isn't like it's not part of the moment. There's just so much going on, and I don't think this is the. I don't think this is the right way to put together a crowd. It's so disparate, and a lot of things. I guess a lot of my critique of the art is that it's very disparate and seems kind of arbitrary. There's not a lot of logic to the art choices. And or that I don't see them and I don't experience them as a reader. So I do, of course, I believe that the artist makes choices when they're making it, but I thought the artwork was just like really I couldn't grok it. And about the writing, by the way, I said I like the writing,
Hmm.
although I actually agree with everything you said. And I would just say it was, I had to like kind of like settle my brain down and be like, okay, you're in this like cliche, honestly, kind of cliche world. And I'm just gonna I'm just gonna let my brain get into it. I'm not usually, exactly, it's like the first thing you said is, the world is ill-defined. I
Hmm.
totally agree. On the first page, it seems to be set in some kind of like medieval New Orleans. Because they mention like crooning and like music and stuff.
Hmm.
And like it's all the language is about music. And you said needing an editor. It's a lot of words, but it's like the you know it,
Yeah, well, an editor to say you need to explain this. Give us a sentence to explain who this guy is, where he is, why this is happening, what is the FCU.
Yes. And you know what? To be honest, look, now I'm getting into a writing critique because it's comics, it's connected.
Hmm.
Like I would have said in terms of, okay, so you're making that great point, kind of from the point of view of an editor and maybe from writing a little bit that they need to make that clear in the beginning. It's
Well, I
very
think
weird.
it's from the experience of doing this podcast for so many years, with doing
Yeah.
critiques with Mulele and others,
Yeah.
that I've become sensitive to that.
I mean, you're right. But I was going to say like my way of looking at kind of a similar point, as someone who, by the way, I more identify as an artist than a writer, but I'm a
Mm.
cartoonist and I write my comics, so
Hmm.
it's similar. I would say in this first page, like, can we not get a panel that's like a little bit higher up to start out with? Give me like a little broader view, you know,
Ah.
just visually. We start out like on the ground in what I don't know what kind of village this is, where it is. Also, the first panel is like actually mimicking another part of the next panel, but it's in
Hmm.
like a weird layout.
Uh huh.
And it
Yeah, I
seems
felt that too. We've got. It looks like I don't know exactly what. There's a silhouette of. I don't know if it's two people or a creature with two heads, and
I think it looks like two people having an intimate moment
yeah,
while
one of them is blowing
playing.
like a Viking horn or something.
Yeah, so
And yeah, it's a small inset panel on the left side, but then in the larger panel, you can see them there in the window on the right side. So it
right.
creates the perception that there are two
Yes.
pairs of people or two-headed people in the same shot.
But and that's the thing. We have figured it out. I think we understand that refers to that in the shot, but 100% visually it reads as like, so there's two windows. So I just want to like argue it for making a comic like this, which seems to have such a complicated world,
Hmm.
and it's not just complicated, but also like the details of how it's different than our world are really weird. Like there's a lot of music and the themes in the beginning, so I thought it was going to be like kind of like a jazzy thing or something. It
Hmm.
wasn't.
Hmm.
But like keep it simpler. Like so there's all these the first panel has this like tilted angle. There's a lot of detail on the ground, on the mud. Very arbitrary. Do we really need all that rendering on the mud? On these like tiny rats like waving their arms out. And there's no detail on the character, and as we never even zoom into the character, like his glory shot, his introduction is like a tiny piece of the first panel, and we never see. I didn't realize his name was there. I kind of missed it, and you never get more. So I want to see in something like this, like more structure and more deliberation in what you want to show, and
Hmm.
less like zany angles, weird silhouettes. If you're gonna have a silhouette of this like I think it looks like two people in an intimate moment, one's smoking a pipe or playing a saxophone. That there's room for that kind of weirdness. Like, oh, we're in this weird
Hmm.
world. What is it? That's
Yeah.
cool because so much else is weird all around it. It's very disorienting.
Hmm.
So I wish they started out with an established.
You get that two-pager of so much weirdness all at once.
Yes.
So yeah, from a storytelling angle, that spread really doesn't work. I don't know. I
No.
think in terms of the art, I'm comparing it to other comics I've read for critiquing comics, and I've seen a lot worse art than this. But I agree with you that I think he's got a problem, but it's at a higher level problem than some of the other art I've seen. where, I mean, I think he can draw characters well, but in this big panel, he hasn't really drawn them in a way that reads well.
No, and
You
that
can't.
is crucial for a comic. It should be reading well. It
Yeah.
looks like he can do a lot of really cool drawings. He can draw the dog with the reindeer, the eyeball guy. He can do all these drawings individually, but it does not read as one drawing. And I think I would just, by the way, say, like, my solution to that, by the way, Tim, by the way, perspective might be a little odd, but my solution to that would be, like, try drawing this try tracing this whole drawing. This is what to do this looks like a good layout for what could be a good drawing, but it's too discordant and incoherent the way everything is put together. Do a trace. I would recommend to the artist, like, trace this drawing on one sheet of paper or one Photoshop layer or whatever, but only one. Don't and you can have the craft of making stuff. Is like, obviously, you can have a little bigger pen, bigger brush or whatever for stuff in the foreground, but keep it all on one thing and make that read as cohesive. And then do the background with like a smaller pen or something, or let that fade back, because just right now I can see the mash of priorities, and it's
Well,
it doesn't.
yeah, I've got a couple of thoughts about this. Well, one is that when I first saw this, my first thought was, "Where's Waldo?" I mean, it's not quite as crowded as those book pages, but it kind of brings that to mind. A far shot of a lot of crazy characters.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking, I don't know, if I were the editor, I might say, instead of this, have the detective walk in, and he is met there by someone who's talking to him as he walks through the FCU, and you get to see these characters in separate panels as he's walking through.
I see, yes.
And then you've also got some dialogue that's giving us some of our bearings, like, where are we, what's going on, and you can draw all these crazy characters bigger than also, and not a spread, but just like 6 panels per page or something, and just a regular comics page as he's walking through to wherever.
Yes, that is such a great solution. That's better than what I had imagined. That's really good. That's really good.
When you watched Batman as a kid, you enjoyed the colorful heroes and villains, the text sound effects on the screen, the thrill of watching a heroic crime fighter escaping from death traps and taking down bad guys. But the show was devised to interest adults too. What did you miss as a kid? Sexual innuendo.
The penguin's too small for me.
Closeted gay characters.
I like that cape, Batman.
Freudian death traps.
Has the giant clam really swallowed Robin?
Police incompetence.
Bruce Wayne is a millionaire playboy. Hardly a secret identity for Batman.
Whether you're a kid or an adult, there's something to like about our favorite Caped Crusader. Tim and Paul dig for the deeper meanings under the Batmania every other Thursday. What's the podcast's name?
To the Batpoles. To the Batpoles. To the Batpoles.
And I just want to say that leads to another critique or a problem I have with the art in this comic about panels. Is the panels in this comic are zany. They're done very differently on almost every page. Actually, I was kind of looking through. It's very inconsistent. There's a few where it's just black lines between the panels, but a lot of them it's like, panels within panels.
Overlapping.
And I really want to say to the artist, to Steve, I want to say, Steve, I really think you should try doing this story with way simpler, way more straightforward panels. I hope this is not uninteresting for listeners, but I really think that increases the legibility, because it's critiquing comics. We're talking about the craft of this thing that the person made. And actually, I would almost be okay with any choice you made. Try doing it consistently through the whole book. and it's going to be less disorienting, less jarring. It's going to make this better flow. In general, I would say, something like, I'm trying to look for, a really bad example to me is page 7, where the chatty woman gets introduced, where it's like a panel, it's like 4 panels inside of 2 panels. It doesn't read very well. I think the nicest kind of panel structure is on page 9, where our hero is meeting Carmen Sandiego Centaur.
Yeah.
If you can, I know you can tell a story without needing the kind of tricks of all that other stuff, and I really think that'll increase the legibility, and also it'll help you to understand the tension and the release that you're constantly drawing in your story, because that's always being messed with by these fiery panels and weird jagged things inside of other things. And doing something like a 2x3 panel grid. And look, I don't let me come off like some guy Daniel Klaus trying to ruin your party. But look at Jesse Marsh, who did the Dude on Mars comics and Tarzan comics too. Jesse Marsh is a great cartoonist to look at, because he did these awesome. It's Jesse Marsh, right? He did these awesome Tarzan comics that are super straightforwardly laid out, and they're really good and exciting. And I just think there's a lot of trickery happening out here that makes me kind of disoriented in the page, and I really think that would help a lot. I really think so with future books. Keeping it simpler will really make it work better.
And yes, you're right, Jesse Marsh. I just looked it up.
Man, love his Tarzan. Good comics.
Okay. Any thoughts about the colors?
The colors. Well, Tim, I guess I don't. Yeah, how do I say this? I don't love them. But I do think that they are pretty consistent, which is a nice thing.
Yeah.
So the general atmosphere is mostly pretty consistent. The styling of the color is really consistent, and I think that's great. That's really good. The light feels pretty consistent.
Yeah, and he'll keep a page kind of in one palette.
Yes.
Throughout the page. That's a good thing to do in comics coloring. So
totally, I admire that, especially when you get near the end of the book, when they're in that carnival, which you might think a carnival would be something that would go nuts, but he actually does keep it and maybe that's a failing. Maybe it should be more nuts, but I'm not trying to say that. I think it's like you said, he does a good job of keeping the pages read pretty well, but it's very kind of saturated,
Yeah.
I think
they're
it's a
very
little
bright colors.
Yeah, I think it's a little too saturated, especially given that the inking really has already provided a lot of blacks. So we really do have good dark mood, and I think it goes beyond making a dark mood. These colors, I think it's a little too saturated, but it's forgive me if I'm looking for problems. That definitely was not what I thought was a main problem in this book. And looking for problems because it's critiquing comics. I'm looking for issues.
Yeah, well, we've always said the best comics make the shortest critiquing comics episodes because there's nothing to complain about.
You're just that's good.
Really good comic. Go look it up. Finished. Yeah. So, but we've gone half an hour, so that's not a good sign.
No, and I think the hardest thing, to be honest, is it's a little because, in some ways I feel like I'm responding as this is not my taste, but that's not what I'm trying to say. I'm sure that's not, because I enjoy a good genre D&D style story. I think this type of story is really good, but I think the way the story is being told, both visually and verbally, it's got problems. I think it's kind of overdone. It's overcooked in a lot of ways, and I wish that they, as you said, the editor, it would have been better if the editor was someone else to tell him, hey, you don't need to say all that. Just and also, by the way, you should tell us where the heck we are. That would help.
Yeah, I would appreciate that.
And I feel visually, I think that they could really reduce the elements that are happening on so many pages. Especially, I said the layouts are way too complicated. Like, cut that out. I think.
Yeah, sometimes it's a little hard to even tell the reading order.
Yes, and I think there's a lot of like line and stuff. It's a little overlined, and I think it would be better if we could reduce these. You get to a point in a drawing, and by the way, this is doable when you're working digitally, as I'm sure this artist is, because that's whatever I think so. There's a point where you want to go back and reduce and make it better, and that'll make it better. And I think it could. I think that could happen too. A lot of the character art, there's a lot of flappy lines on his trench coat that I don't think are really defining any shapes or masses on that trench coat. It's just kind of a lot of lines, and these orcs. I really liked that orc character who was too angry. I think it's a she too. I think she was fun.
Yeah, didn't realize that until they called her she or her, but
like, while, yes.
Female?
Took a while. Again, like so I want to say, to compliment the writing though, I thought it was really, I did like how there were a lot of distinct locations and they moved from one to the next pretty well. It's like you start out like on this street in this town, which I agree, it wasn't defined enough, but it was like, okay, there's a lot of flavor here. It's this town. And then into this police station, and then they went to like one bar, and then they went to the festival place, the carnival place. And then similarly, like, I like that they did have like real, I mean, it's it's the strength that's in that first double page spread. There's a lot of characters. They're really distinct, and I think they do a good job with that, but it would be better to, I would rather them focus better on the main characters than do all that, because I don't know much about the mains. And then I liked that girl orc or whatever she is. she was fun. She was more fun than our main character, who just like kind of boring basic guy. So I wish that we could have gotten more out of that. That'd be way cooler.
Also, here and there, I felt the dialogue was pretty cliche. Like we're one place toward the end where he says, "You're good, real good," and I feel like I've read that in a lot of places, talking to this warrior guy.
Yes, I mean, I agree, Tim. As I said, I feel like when I'm reading this, I was able to kind of click off and enjoy it and go into cliche mode. It is very kind of cliched. So, Tim, how does one get out of that? How do you advise to make it less cliche?
Well, I don't know. Again, an editor might pick this up where the writer might not notice it in his or her own work, but
totally.
Yeah, I mean, I guess just kind of be aware of, like, does this sound like something you've heard in a lot of movies, in a lot of TV shows, in a lot of comics. And try to be original with how you're phrasing things, I think.
Yeah, but I think that's hard. I think that so I have an idea what to say. I'll tell you, but I think the challenge is like how to help someone out of that, especially as you said. I think it's totally true. It's hard for one person to catch themselves doing it, where Andrew can see it. So I don't know. I think there's a lot of dialogue here, and you can really help by reducing the unnecessary. Just get rid of it. Like when a character says something that does not need to be said, you're just kind of filling space. Try not saying it. Try leaving that panel empty, and see, like, okay, because you're just filling stuff in. Like, I think, again, with the text as well as the drawn detail, a lot could be taken out. And then once you've done that, you can go back in and be judicious and be like, well, this doesn't even read. I don't know what's going on. But then you can figure, like, what needs to be there, and helping to figure out what needs to be there by getting rid of the extra stuff would help. But yeah, I'm trying to think of some. I'm trying to find some. I'm trying to find some examples of that dialogue that it bugged me. But I agree. It was, well, it's just because the character setups are just kind of like are kind of cliched and basic. Again, like the the Victor guy.
Mm-hmm.
He's like straight man, and he's also like really good at it. He's giving them like he's telling them like how to go into this carnival. You have to follow these magical rules, and the other characters are like, I want to break the rules, and he's like, don't. It's like, you know, so I see the dynamic that's being set up, but you know, what does that say that's new about any of the characters? Okay, it told us that one of them wants to break the rules anyway, doesn't care about the rules, but his answer is just don't. Like, okay, I already get that he's like a cantankerous, like super, he's proficient, he knows what to do, you know, but this interaction didn't teach me anything new about him.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a missed opportunity and kind of a waste of the reader's time.
Yeah, and the overly talky girl is also, you know, I feel like I've seen that plenty already. And
Okay.
again, there's like all this dialogue that you don't even need to read.
Yeah, she kind of shuts up after the first 10 pages or so.
Yeah, she does calm down.
Which is like, so what is it, you know? Well, I think they would say that it's not that she's an overly talkative person, it's that she was nervous on her first day. And And she kind of talks with some slang. Like she goes, it was a thing. It was such a thing. You know, like, okay, but, you know, if that's what it is, then if she's nervous on her first day, if that's and it's an annoying part in the first few pages of reading it, give us some payoff at the end, you know, or something. Like, let's have her develop instead of her just like disappearing into like a basically competent cop who says some slang sometimes.
Yeah.
You know, by the end of the story, she can help someone. She could help Victor. You know, did she? I don't think she really did that though. She kind of still remained this like lower level noob.
Yeah, I think in the battle she tried to get her squirrel to do something, and the squirrel got ground up.
Oh, is that what that was?
Whatever that creature was, got stepped on, I think.
Oh, so is she like an animal? See, wait, I don't. Yeah, I remember that part. I remember thinking that was too awful for me to understand what was going on.
Yeah, it was kind of over the top. She says, "Kogo Pogo is the name of this creature. Untie the sack, my friend." Oh, it's two creatures. Okay, Kogo and Pogo, and at least one of them gets stepped on by the orc, I guess, or there's a green foot on the creature, and it's splooch, and there's blood going everywhere, and parts of the creature.
Well, and you know,
and she doesn't even react. You know, the girl who sent them out there. There's no reaction. We don't even see her again for panel. You know, a couple pages at least.
Great point. There's this moment where her like pets, they seem to be like undead squirrels or something.
Well, and there's a balloon coming in from the side saying "rude." I guess that's her reaction.
That's her reaction.
Rude.
Yeah, and okay, and that's a really great point. Like it's like we don't get her reaction of that either. So okay, so these mean nothing to her. That could be the reality of the story. You know, maybe the reality of the story is that she actually summons tons of undead animals she doesn't really care about at all. But that's remarkable. That should be then remarked upon.
And when were we introduced to Kogo and Pogo? Scrolling back here, and I don't think we'd ever seen them. So
no, I was confused by that.
I mean,
too.
We need to be introduced to a character before the character dies.
Yes, that was very weird. Oh, I'm now going all the way back to the beginning. Now I'm understanding. So she has an undead crow in her first introduction. So she must be a undead animal magician type person, but she doesn't like have them in every panel. Like it's not like they're always around her. So it's.
And I imagine that somebody who plays the game would know that about her, but.
Yeah, right, but that's not.
Well, and she says, "Can I deputize my puppy Fiasco? He's technically dead, but I reanimated him, and he's almost exactly the same aside from the smell, which you totally get used to." Blah 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 blah. So there's that little hint there, but you know, buried in 6 word balloons just on that side of the panel, I just kind of disregarded it, I guess.
Yes, And can I? You mentioned the thing about her reaction and to the squirrel being destroyed.
Or lack of reaction.
Lack of reaction. I also want to say we don't even see the character who stepped on her barely. That character is shown, so that's a real missed opportunity for showing some like dynamic, action, some motion. Like in the previous panel, you see them running towards a big double-headed creature in silhouette, but it's in silhouette and it's quite small. So I don't even really know. And then I went back. It's like 2 pages back. Oh, it is in there one spot, very tiny. So it's like the character who did this thing is barely even in there. I don't even see who did it. And
yeah, and then later, a couple pages later, you meet the character, and really see his 2 heads. And but I didn't really make the connection that's who it was that stepped on the creature.
Yeah. I feel like in this kind of action sequence, by the way, a good source for like really good action is like Dragon Ball Z comics. The early, especially the earlier like Dragon Ball Z comics have like great fighting choreography. This is like
storytelling.
Great storytelling and fighting choreography. It's really there's all these like fights in Dragon Ball Z where you can like really clearly see someone's like right turn, like left turn, like you can see their body moving around. It's really gratifying to see a fight happening, to see it shown, and it can still be chaotic and still be scary. But I don't really like how in this one it's a lot of characters who we don't know at all, doing things to characters we don't know at all, very rarely seeing anyone in full view. It's kind of like just like running, like holding a camera in a crowd and just like running through the crowd and then saying like, I was showing a crazy crowd sequence. It's like, okay, but it's not the most effective way to show a crazy crowd sequence. You're letting your like lack of craft serve as your like signifier, like this is crazy. you should show it in something more deliberate, and not just like I don't know what to show kind of thing. I'm getting nasty here. I'm sorry.
I think we're starting to bludgeon this comic. Maybe we should put the brakes on.
All right. Well, again, we're talking though about things that we see that can be improved. Just discrete things. I'm just trying to say this sucks. That's not how I feel. But I'm looking at a lot of like missed opportunities, a lot of kind of like overbaked things that don't make a lot of sense. And I think it should like, the artist and the writer, and if they're so if they're so blessed, an editor in the future should focus on making this thing a little more, making this kind of story more clear.
And you're definitely right about the fight choreography, the storytelling there. If you can't follow the fight well, then it needs to be redone.
Yeah, you could do a lot more with less, is what I think. Yeah, I didn't need to see like 8 characters. You could have had just like one. It could have been all about that. I mean, I honestly barely understood that it was 8 characters. So that's the thing. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Stop.
Okay. All right. Well, Steve, sorry, we found a lot of issues with the comic, but don't give up. Please keep working on it. Send us your next work. We can watch your progress. And listeners, if you'd like us to critique your work, if you really want us to critique your work, send a PDF or a link to mail@deconstructingcomics.com. So
I would never do this to someone who didn't ask for it. You know what I mean? I hope that I hope that this is like useful to Steve. We're totally on Steve's side here. I would say that. We're not coming at this as like, critics on a TV show trashing someone. I consider, as I know you're a writer and editor, and I consider myself a writer and an artist. You know, we're talking about it with Steve. Maybe we got a little too carried away, though. You know, maybe we'd be more chill if Steve was on the call with us. But I don't think you want to start having every artist on the call with you when we do this. Maybe you do. Maybe you do. Maybe that'd be a
Not
good
particularly. The logistics are a problem for one thing.
It's the logistics. But I enjoy talking about this, this stuff, and I hope that this doesn't. Hope we're not being jerks here.
Yeah, I don't think so. I hope not. Right. So, thanks for listening, and thank you, Ryan.
Thanks, Tim.
Check the show notes for a link to the Epic Tavern store, where you can see some of the pages we talked about and buy the comic if you're interested. You can support Critiquing Comics and all our shows by joining us at patreon.com/deconcomics, or sending a one-time PayPal donation to mail@deconstructingcomics.com. Wednesday on Deconstructing Comics, I lure Mulele out of podcast retirement by offering him a chance to discuss Chad in Amsterdam number 6. Tune in to hear us discuss the latest issue of one of our favorites. Till then, this is Tim, and thanks for listening to Critiquing Comics.